gamer.
Another MLB season is here, which means it's time for MLB The Show 21. The latest installment in the long-running baseball series from Sony San Diego, MLB The Show 21 marks a major milestone for the franchise, as it not only makes its debut on the next-gen PlayStation 5, but it also brings the series to Xbox consoles for the very first time. This year's game brings gameplay changes, needed updates to Road to the Show, and even a brand new option for next-gen players. But with virtual stadiums full of fans waiting for the crack of the bat, does MLB The Show 21 keep the series at its peak, or is a decline starting to happen? Let's start this right by talking about the absolute best area of MLB The Show 21, the gameplay. There are 3 different gameplay styles for you to choose from: casual, simulation, and competitive. This allows you, no matter how you want to enjoy the game, to be able to play MLB The Show with the controls you want and the realism you desire. Dynamic difficulty remains my favorite way to play MLB The Show, as nothing feels unfair on the field. If I'm struggling, the game will adapt. If I'm hitting homer after homer, the AI will change things up. Also returning this year is the PCI customization, which continues to make hitting a more personalized experience. On the mound, Sony San Diego has added pinpoint pitching to MLB The Show 21. A brand new pitching interface, pinpoint pitching is the most challenging pitching mechanic in series history, bar none. It's a mix of the old MLB 2K pitching, along with PGA Tour 2K swing mechanics. You use your right analog stick to trace a pattern and place your pitching. The timing of your motion will also see you find more success or be punished by opposing batters. Now, don't judge me, but as someone who still likes using the traditional pitching meter, pinpoint pitching will leave you questioning your abilities over and over again. But that said, I still find myself wanting to try and master it. It's that good and that well developed of a mechanic. On the field, there's more than 100 new fielding animations at hand. There's rarely a time where I questioned why or how a player was doing something on the diamond. When a ball's in play, the fielders are actually moving much better than they have at any point over the last few years. I don't question how a player seemingly warped towards a liner. It's actually the other way around. There are times where I think my fielder is sure to make the play, only to just miss it. It's something I'd rather have in a game 10 times out of 10 than the opposite. And for the better part of the last decade, gameplay in MLB The Show has been the biggest selling point over anything else the series has ever offered to me. From a response time to animations, everything continues to be as smooth as butter with this game. It's really hard to find a sports game that plays as close to its real-life counterpart better than what MLB The Show 21 does. When it comes to available game modes, MLB The Show 21 has the deepest collection of offerings. Whether you want to go it alone or play against others around the world, there's something for you to dive into. Your expected smaller modes like Home Run Derby, Postseason, Play Now, Retro, Weekly Challenge, and more are there, but the main modes you'll play are still Diamond Dynasty, Road to the Show, and Franchise. Diamond Dynasty is the deepest mode the game has to offer. With so many options for both online and offline players, you can carve out a full path to success in the mode. Every single card of the mode can be unlocked without spending a dime. Though grinding is still going to be tedious for many players that just don't want to invest endless hours into earning cards. There's even more elements added to Diamond Dynasty this year, with the ability to bring in your created stadium as well as your Road to the Show player. Now, speaking of Road to the Show, the mode gets a nice fresh coat of paint this year with the addition of podcasts to document your player's journey. Last-gen users will get them as audio-only episodes, while those on the Xbox Series X and S and PS5 get them as full video shows. Without giving away any spoilers, because we don't do that in our reviews, I'll say that if you were a fan of the old Tony Bruno shows and the old Madden NFL games, you'll find a lot of enjoyment from these episodes during your career. Developing your ball player has also seen a welcome change in the mode, as you can decide you want to be the next Shohei Ohtani by being a two-way player. There's also the ability to have a different loadout per game based on the situation at hand, adding much more strategy within the mode. Road to the Show could still use a bit more updates, specifically with contracts, but it's deep enough to keep you coming back months after launch. March to October is back with some changes like multi-year campaigns, minor league roster management, and player-locked episodes. Personally, the player-locked episodes is one of the best new elements to the mode, as it puts the focus on one player at a time and will center around key moments and decisions involving that player. For minor league management, the fast track allows players to be MLB ready quicker to coincide with the speed of the mode. March to October is still that perfect mode for those who want control of a team for a full season, but really don't want the added pressure, abilities, and time consumption that comes with the typical franchise mode. Now, year after year, franchise mode fans are often left feeling like outcasts. It seems like more and more efforts are placed into the modes that bring in money than those that preach replayability. MLB The Show 21 will feel no different to anyone who felt that way. The biggest addition to franchise mode this year are changes to trade logic and, wait for it, depth charts. That's right, depth charts. Now don't get me wrong, the depth charts are a nicety to have, especially when you want to quickly see how your team will look 2 to 3 years down the line. But this should not be one of your back-of-the-box features for the mode. Franchise does get the benefit of Stadium Creator for rebranding and relocation, and budgeting has become simpler for those who want to do a bit less in that area. So while there are plenty of things franchise mode needs to improve on, the mode can still be fun for players. One thing I really did like is the contracts being handed out by teams just feel more authentic to what we see in real life. Silly season exists for the big names, while some you'll see wait out for hopes of getting a decent prove-it deal. I don't like, however, that you can still only sign contract extensions with players during spring training and during prep for the trade deadline. Nor can you sign extensions with players that have more than a year remaining on their deal. I would love to be able to get a contract done for a player ahead of time than have to wait until the literal last minute. There's also a slight problem with AI teams not filling out their rosters as seasons move on, though a fix for that is apparently on the way from Sony, so it should be taken care of soon enough. For the big new mode, yes, I'm calling it a mode for how deep it is, Stadium Creator is finally a part of the game after years of hoping and begging by fans. And this isn't an over-exaggeration when I say this. The suite is deeper than anything anyone could have hoped for. You can either start from scratch or edit a pre-made template to create or recreate the ballpark of your dreams. Want a volcano in right field? You can have it. Want it to be impossible to hit home runs? Build up that wall. There are so many options at your disposal that you can spend hours just building ballparks. The Creator is a next-gen exclusive, but it's clear that the power of the new hardware was needed to get everything the mode offers into MLB The Show 21. My only complaint is placing things can be a bit finicky, but that's only in certain situations. And lastly, when taking the game online, the servers are more reliable than in years past. However, the syncing when making contact can still be bothersome for those who are either new to the game or rarely play the game online. Now, for all the things that are available and that the modes do well, let's take a minute to talk about what isn't available in MLB The Show 21. And if you think it's going to be a small list, chances are you're going to be disappointed. First things first, there's still no online franchise, and custom leagues got no additions for this year. So you still need human players to fill out your league. There's no drafting, no free agency, and nothing else of the sort. It may be time to actually start taking bets on what game gets a legitimate online franchise mode back first, MLB The Show or EA Sports NHL. Circling back to Stadium Creator, for all the greatness of it, there's one thing that's bothersome. If you're using a custom stadium, you can only play day games. If you thought it would be cool to see the pier that you put in the backdrop lit up at night during a game, you can't experience that in MLB The Show 21. Hopefully that's one thing that can be changed later on in a patch, but I'm not so sure with what this mode has to offer. And lastly, it was announced right off the bat that carryover saves wouldn't be available for this year's game. And even after months to digest that news, it still doesn't make it any less disappointing after years of it being a part of MLB The Show. There are players like myself that have grinded a franchise or a Road to the Show player for years, only to have to start from scratch this year. If there was something big that Sony was bringing to the game as the reason, that's one thing. But there seems to be no real reason for the omission unless Stadium Creator caused that. But that's kinda hard to believe with where that mode impacts the rest of the game. With the game's presentation, let's just address the major elephant in the room right off the bat. The game's UI is absolutely awful. While it's fast on the PS5, which is a great thing, it is visually unappealing and has too many buried elements. It makes searching for what you need a nightmare at times simply due to the fact that you don't know where things are. As far as how it looks, I'll be blunt. It looks more like a first run concept demo than anything that should have been approved for a final release. It's not the biggest problem in the world obviously because it does nothing to impact the modes or gameplay, but it's definitely not something that anybody's going to say this is how it should be. I've seen one developer indie games with better UI than MLB The Show 21. UI aside, the game's presentation could also use a bit of work. The game returns Matt Vasgersian, Mark DeRosa, and Dan Plesac as play-by-play commentators, with Heidi Watney back as the dugout reporter. The interactions and flow are pretty seamless and have a true broadcast feel to them. The problem with the broadcast is that the lines are mostly the same as the last few years. There's really nothing new here, and it's starting to feel stale. MLB The Show is long overdue for a complete overhaul in the broadcast department, and I think it needs to come sooner rather than later. Speaking of feeling stale, let's talk about the player models and in-game visuals. While they've hit the limit on what can be done on the PS4 and Xbox One, a new generation of hardware should mean a jump in graphical power. With MLB The Show 21, that really doesn't feel the case at all. There are upgrades to the lighting which makes some moments look better, but everything else truly looks identical. When some of the biggest changes in graphics is the length of a player's hair between generations, you kinda know you're behind the 8 ball. For me personally, it's just another argument for leaving the last generation behind immediately when a new console generation launches, and that's a hill that I'm ready to die on. Though it may seem like it after watching through this review, you can't really call MLB The Show 21 a bad game. The gameplay remains extremely fun, and there are modes for pretty much every type of baseball fan and player. Though the focus of the game remains centered around Diamond Dynasty, the improvements to Road to the Show add a nice breath of fresh air to the mode, while Stadium Creator is deeper than anyone expected a first-time effort to be. The biggest problem with MLB The Show 21 is the crossroad that Sony San Diego is starting to find itself at. Franchise mode is starting to feel abandoned, the presentation can use a refresh, and online still isn't really where a 2021 AAA game should be. There may be an audience on Xbox consoles enjoying the game for the first time ever, but that doesn't mean the team at Sony San Diego needs to not keep longtime players of the show happy. And as it stands now, there's a lot that needs to change for MLB The Show to avoid becoming viewed by its fans in the same way as Madden NFL is by its. For more on MLB The Show 21 and sports gaming content daily, be sure to subscribe to Sports Gamers Online and hit that bell to be notified whenever a new video goes live. And as always, visit our website at sportsgamersonline.com.